Hi, welcome to Tech Tonic at Western Washington University. My name's Dan Purdy, Associate Director of the MBA Program and a marketing instructor here at Western, and I'll be your host for the next hour. Tech Tonic is all about technology. It's all about how the world is moving and how fast it's moving. And increasingly, technology is about media. It's about social media, it's about traditional media, it's about print media, it's about mobile media. So we wanted to explore media and think about how media is changing the world as we know it today. Changing the way we think, changing how we interact with others, changing what we do in real time. And so what we wanted to go out and do today is talk to students, talk to professors, and see how it's changing the way they learn, changing the way they teach, and indeed informing how they even think about things. Today, the media landscape is exploding like we haven't ever seen before. We have companies that are taking shape in less than 10 years that become $100 billion enterprises, like Facebook, the leading social media company. 10 years ago, didn't exist. Today, it's getting ready for one of the largest IPOs in history. Yesterday, Facebook paid $1 billion to purchase Instagram, a web application-based picture editing and sharing software that has no revenue. That's what I call tectonic. So we wanted to come to you live today to show you how we do it. We wanted to practice what we preach and put our money where our mouth is. So today we're going to be sharing ideas and thoughts from students and professors from around the campus. And first off today, we're going to be going to students to talk about how they share media, how they learn with media, and what they can do.
Do you think you'll need to know about video, the internet, or social media in the future?
Most likely.
Okay. How critical do you think the use of technology and media in your future career is?
Oh, I think big time. I've met lots of people. I've met people that are helping me make a website for my business now and for free. We've met over on Twitter. And so I think social media has a huge, or media in general, has a huge impact on what I want to do on video producing and photography and stuff like that.
Awesome. So is that what your business is?
Yeah, video production.
You have to know how to use it to the point where you have to, you get jobs with it. And if you don't, compared to an old person, it's kind of harder for them to find a job in the blossoming world of technology usage, I guess. That makes sense to you, but yeah.
Now we're going to go to reporter Connor Flynn, who's in the field with Professor N.O.W. at the Academic Instructional Center. Connor?
A mental break. So I think there's only so much time that these guys can spend with just listening to me talk to them. Yeah. Without starting to say that a little bit. Mm-hmm. Not that you guys would do that. So I can provide better source credibility for the points that I'm trying to make by bringing in different videos, and I can also illustrate specific points in a different way that I might just by talking to them.
What is your primary choice of media?
I do a lot of videos from, say, TED, and I'll show different commercials that have been designed to to illustrate a certain aspect of marketing strategy. So, a firm is trying to position itself in a certain way. I can pull up a certain commercial that does that. I was teaching an MBA class this morning where I went through the Cadbury Dairy Milk Bar marketing campaign to show how they use classical conditioning. I'll also use things like Google Plus, a social networking site, as a means of having students interact with each other and share ideas outside of the classroom.
So primarily internet sources and such like that you like,
yeah.
Commercials, as you said,
yeah,
things like that.
Yeah.
Right.
So I've got certain websites that I can go to that will have libraries of commercials I can pull from and things like that.
What do you think of the internet and how it just seems to be getting more and more prevalent in people's usage at home and in education and at work?
The internet is big, and I think it's it's been it's probably been the single biggest transformative technology in my life. So, I mean,
do you think of it in a positive way, or maybe in more of a oppressive Skynet kind of fashion?
Oh, I think of it generally in a positive way. The concern I have with the internet and the access to all this information that people have is I think that it's created temptation amongst my students to be multitaskers. So I'm talking about one thing, they're interested in that, they'll go and they'll look at something online and they'll be trying to engage in both things at the same time. And what we typically find, I think what studies have shown, is that people are not good at that. They think they're good at that, but they're not good at that. So getting people to focus on just one thing, I think, is probably the most difficult thing when we're looking at how students are using social media and new media and the internet during classes and things.
So that's a challenge you find as a professor, to keep students focused on what you're trying to teach them.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just too tempting to go off on those tangents with all that information at your fingertips.
Yep.
Well, thank you very much, Ed. It's been a pleasure. And we'll go back to you, Dan.
Welcome back to Tech Tonic Live. Thanks very much, Connor and Professor Love. We appreciate very much your time, Professor Love. I know that you were involved in a class and stepped out during break to be able to do this live with us. Greatly appreciated. I'm here today with Amara, who is a social media expert. My words, not hers. She doesn't like those words at all. If anybody can be an expert in social media, which is hard to say because it's such an emerging area that it's hard to say what's an expert and what isn't. And Kanae has some really interesting experiences as a social media director, also as a blogger. So Kanae, tell us how media is kind of impacting your life and how you're using it.
Absolutely. So I use media to pretty much develop as a professional and as a student. So my blog I use to network with other students and to kind of get my name out there. I want to go into PR and social media, and it's just a great way to show that I'm a professional, not just a student. And I use Twitter and LinkedIn a lot as well to connect with other professionals in the country. Places, I mean, I'm in Bellingham, but I get to talk to people in New York, LA, Oklahoma, I mean, random places. And it's just a great way to connect with other people. I absolutely love social media.
And how do those connections impact how you learn and what you bring into the classroom and your work?
Absolutely. So something that I've started doing here at Western is I brought a social media workshop last quarter, and I'm doing another one this quarter on LinkedIn, and I'm kind of becoming an advocate for students learning about social media and how they can use it as a professional tool. Because most students are very aware of how Facebook can be used as a social tool, but kind of lack the knowledge about Twitter and LinkedIn and how those can actually lead to professional relationships and then job opportunities, which is so relevant for current students.
That's absolutely right. One of the things that I think is really important that students understand is that folks want to work with those they know, like, and trust. And you can get to know them on social media, you can get to like them on social media, but you still have to show that you're trustworthy. And that means you have to step into the real world. Do you ever meet any of these folks that you connect with online in the real world?
Actually, I have. The first experience that I had, I reached out to a Western alum because that was kind of my first stop, and I talked to her on the phone after we had a brief encounter on LinkedIn, and that worked out great. I also met another alum recently through a Twitter interaction and a LinkedIn interaction, and I haven't met a lot of professionals offline yet, but I'm slowly building up to that point. And I think people have seen my online presence and then met me, but I might not be aware of that. So for instance, in the body of my email, I always include my social media links. And if people click on that, then they have an idea of who I am as a professional. And if they want to continue contacting me or talking to me, they already kind of know what they're dealing with or who they're, what kind of work I can create. So.
Fantastic and well said. Thank you, Kanae, for your time and your insights. We appreciate it very much.
Thank you very much.
So what we have today is a growing importance, as you can hear from Kanae's discussion, about media literacy. People have to understand what media literacy is and understand media, but oftentimes people don't understand what media even is itself, much less what media literacy means. So let's take a listen to what some students have learned about what media literacy means to them.
Media is any form of communication and information through means of video or audio.
I suppose media would be information about current events and things that are going on that are relevant.
Media? What's media, Leona? What's media?
Stuff people look at.
Stuff people look at, she says.
Media, I think, is anything that we create or make that's, I guess right now, a lot of it's on the internet, social media. That's the big push now, but I think really media is kind of anything that's maybe pushing in, telling us how to live, online, TV, radio, any sort of that creative and advertising and all that good stuff all packed into one. I think that's kind of a big explanation for what media is.
What is media?
The news, what you see on TV.
Yeah? Do you think the internet's media?
Yes,
Similar?
I do. I do think the internet's media too.
Okay. Are you media literate?
I believe so, yes.
Are you media literate?
I suppose so.
Why?
Lots of internet browsing, links from things to things, just kind of browsing, learning things.
Are you media literate?
Depends.
What does that mean?
Like newspaper or like social networks, you know, that kind of media. There's a lot, so I guess it depends on what kind of media literate you need.
I would argue, I would say I'm media literate. That's kind of the, yeah, definitely.
Well, I guess it depends on what you define as media literate.
What do you think media literacy means?
I guess maybe being up to date on like current issues, you know, seeing what's going on in the world.
Okay. Are you media literate?
To a certain extent, I guess, what you define as media literate.
What do you think media literacy means?
Just to be informed about like current issues and not even like just current pop culture.
To me, media literacy would be the way that media type agents such as like the internet or companies with ad space or TV and stuff like that are trying to impact viewers / people who they would like to impact, I guess. Yes, I would consider myself media literate. I am a psychology major, so I've kind of taken a lot of classes that focus on the way that social issues and sociological media can impact students.
I think a media is a communication system that sends a message to people wherever they are.
Okay. Would you consider yourself media literate?
Not really.
Welcome back to Tech Tonic Live. I'm Dan Purdy, your host. It's real clear from that clip that Western students have a really clear understanding of media literacy. A lot of that's due to our next guest, who's with Chelsea Richmond, Dr. Michael Carlberg, one of our communications professor. Chelsea, let's talk a little bit with Professor Carlberg about how important media literacy is. Chelsea?
Let's go. Have a go. Thanks, Dan. Michael, you teach a class called Critical Media Literacy. What are the types of things that students are learning in that class?
Well, I teach broadly about our media environment and the shape it and the ways that it can shape or influence us and really how to make a difference in the media environment if we're interested.
That's great. Why is media literacy so important?
I think you can understand why it's important if you look at how much media people consume in this country. The average American consumes over 4 hours of television a day. The average American teenager consumes that much television and another 3.5 hours of other media, largely commercial media. So really we're immersed in so much media that it makes sense for us to be able to sort of develop critical thinking skills and the ability to evaluate our media, to choose high quality media, and potentially make a difference again in our media environment.
And so speaking of that, how does technology play a role? Obviously it's pretty important. How does that work with your class and the overall idea of media literacy?
Sure. So I mean with the evolution of technology, every new technology that comes out creates new ways of distributing old media or whole new forms of media. And really with every new technological revolution, we have to develop sort of increasingly sophisticated ways of thinking about media, of using media, and of understanding the way that these technologies can influence us.
What kind of media are you using in your class or working with mostly?
Well, I mean, we look at all media from traditional, print, radio, television, which are still very influential. We look at emerging media, social media, the internet, really the whole sort of 9 yards.
That's awesome. What compels you to start teaching this subject? Do you feel that media is, I know sometimes it has a bad reputation. Do you feel like you're on a side, or you feel like it's still, there's something good?
Oh, I think there's a lot of good media. Media is really like a two-edged sword, right? It cuts both ways. It can be used for very beneficial purposes. It can also be used in very manipulative and harmful purposes. So the reason I teach is because I think media is so important. We need to become not only more critically informed consumers of media, but also active producers of media, like you're learning how to do here today.
Right, yeah. Just a fun question. Have you heard anything about the Hunger Games that's coming out and the kind of social commentary that's making on, amusing ourselves, and whether we would get to that point? Do you see that happening in an extreme future, or?
Well, a lot of these movies, kind of dystopian, films and other types of media, I think they alert us to things that we need to think carefully about in media. So I think the Hunger Games is a good example of that. And then, I mean, the Hunger Games also just as a phenomenon, just the crowd destroying, is also an interesting conversation in terms of, I know, for instance, people are thinking about children watching it, and is it appropriate? Those are also questions we need to think through.
Yeah, definitely. Regulations are kind of getting to the point where we need to start putting some caps on there for children watching it, especially with commercials and stuff. But thank you so much for interviewing with us today, and it was nice to meet you. Thanks. Back to you, Dan.
Welcome back to Tech Tonic Live. I'm Dan Purdy. Teaching students about technology is probably one of the most important things the university can do for its students. Let's see what some of the students here at Western Washington University have to say about the technology education at Western.
Are you getting technology skills from any of your classes?
No.
I think that Western has found a fair balance between using technologies that people have in every day. I mean, we can access our email on our phone. If we need to get in contact with anyone, we can email. People can obviously use Facebook if they need to ask somebody about homework. So there's a lot of integration with technology on Western's campus.
Do you think Western allows students enough opportunities to use technology?
Kind of depends on the classes too. Like you mean like in class, or?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I see a lot of people who have laptops and like tablets taking notes, but then I see a lot of other people who are like fiercely writing on their notebooks, and I think it kind of it may inhibit their learning. But some people are totally fine with it. But for me, I can't really live without taking notes on a notebook.
Okay. Do you think Western gives students enough opportunity to explore media and technology?
No.
And why is that?
I don't know. I just don't think they do. I've been kind of blessed, I guess, to be able to do some really cool things here at Western with the Western communications and stuff like that. Now I have a job, but besides that, I would say no, they don't really have much of a video place. I've taught everything myself. I've taught myself everything. Besides that, I don't know. There's not too much that Western has that I have to say.
Yes, I do. I think they do. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of access to computers around, so yes, I do think they give a lot of opportunities.
Do you think Western gives students the opportunity or education with media and technology?
Yeah. From what I've seen, Western definitely does give integrates a lot of technology and media into their teaching.
We are working very hard to make sure we get everything, and Western is doing that. Is very good in doing that. But I cannot say that Western is doing good enough. But we are progressing.
Welcome back to Tech Tonic Live. I'm Dan Purdy. I'm here with communication professor Jennifer Karchmer. Professor Karchmer is also a practicing journalist and teaches professional communication here at Western. We thought it'd be great to talk to her about some of the tools that she uses to teach with and some of the tools her students use in her classes. So Jennifer, what's it like teaching professional communication to students in this day and age when they have so many technology and media tools to work with?
Yeah, thank you, Dan. It's really amazing how the course that I teach has changed over just a few years. I mean, now we're introducing things like LinkedIn as a network tool that students use. And I'm also teaching this quarter in what's called the AIC building, which is the newest building. And it's a great room that's equipped with all kinds of smart technology. So I'm actually just getting to learn some of that myself.
Excellent. So I know in my class, I teach integrated marketing communications. I actually moved it to a computer lab because I see the value of having them have access to their technology in real time. And of course, we're thinking about things like how do we use the internet to reach people with messaging. In professional communications, how are you using some of the newest tools, like LinkedIn you mentioned as a networking tool? How are you asking the students to actually use that to develop their method of professional communication?
Yeah, great question. One of the assignments in the course actually asks the students to do a writing and social media assignment. So it's where they put together an assignment that they will introduce in what's called their mock job interview. So they show up with written materials, so they're very professional that way, that they can give to a potential employer, but also they show that they have a professional web presence. Now we know that Facebook is quite ubiquitous and everyone has a Facebook page, and it does have some context in journalism and other fields where people are using it professionally, but let's be honest, a Facebook page is usually used for more personal, fun reasons, and it's not always the most professional way for us to present ourselves. So students are using LinkedIn. One of the assignments asks them to actually start building a page, and one of my former students, who's also a teaching assistant now, is actually doing a workshop on LinkedIn and other networking portals. So I think it's so important that students know what is expected once they graduate, because that is really the standard right now in terms of networking with other professionals, whether you're in healthcare, communications, journalism, anthropology, business, finance, accounting. It's what folks are using to get in touch.
What's the old adage? You never get a second chance to make a first impression, right?
Oh yeah, the nonverbal communication that we talk about in class. Certainly the way we portray ourselves, our facial expressions, and what we wear to a job interview is really important.
Yeah, the way that I describe it to my students is Facebook is sort of hanging out in the garage with your friends and you might play some music or drink some beer. LinkedIn is sort of work. It's the professional environment. And so there's different uses for different things, and then they need to be cognizant of that. How do you relate that sort of thing to your students?
Well, that's interesting because one of the things we learned through LinkedIn is it can have a fun aspect, I suppose, but really it's not an appropriate place to put pictures of you with your friends or to post things about your pets or, what your cat did that morning. So it is really supposed to be more about being professional. Something that'll happen for the students when they do their mock interview is we'll have an actual laptop there in the interview room, and we'll have them call up their LinkedIn page so that we can see their professional persona online. And as we know, more and more employers, whether this is legal or not, are asking students, or rather potential candidates, for their Facebook password and their pages. So this is a good controversy that we're talking about in class because it's really right in the edge of the news now on whether that is legal in the workplace.
That's great, and I love it, the fact that you make them actually develop a LinkedIn profile, because when they go out there, I've seen so many students who have nothing, and having just a little bit and not much there actually makes you look worse than not having anything at all. So the fact that you guys are actually developing a LinkedIn profile is really fantastic. So are there other types of technologies that you use in class that maybe you didn't use 10 years ago?
Well, that's a great question too, because what I'm finding now is more and more students have an e-reader or a Kindle, and it brings up a lot of interesting topics for class because, one, they need to bring their textbook to class, but at the same time, because it is a small class of 25 students and it's communication, I really do like to enrich the class in interpersonal ways so that students don't all have laptops in front of their faces, but that we're actually using eye contact, we're talking face to face, and really focusing on those skills as well. So it's really, as Michael Carlberg just mentioned in the previous segment, it's a two-edged sword with technology. I mean, there are advantages and ways to use it professionally and ethically, but there's also good old eye contact and interpersonal and nonverbal skills as well.
I've heard that concern from a lot of professionals that I work with in the MBA program, that they're concerned that a new generation of students, because they're more used to texting and communicating online, that they're not as comfortable with interpersonal communications, and they really want them to be. The professionals realize how important those soft skills are. Are there ways that you're encouraging or working with students to get them outside of sort of their electronic shell and back into the real world?
Yeah, as I said, really, we try to focus in through our textbook, but also through all of our assignments to focus on eye contact. And really, the number one skill that employers are looking for in any discipline will be communication. That's in writing, verbally, and non-verbally.
And being able to think on your feet like we are here today.
Oh yeah, impromptu works really well.
Thank you very much, Professor Karchmer. It's been fantastic.
Yeah,
Thanks for joining us. So, new media has a huge impact on our lives today. Many professors, as we just heard Professor Karchmer talk about, involve media in their lectures, but some are actually teaching how to use new media techniques in their classes. So now we're going to go to Margaret Farland, our reporter who is with Professor Casey Morrow, who teaches new media design. Margaret?
Hi, thanks Dan, and we are here with Casey. Now Casey, you primarily teach classes that train design students with technology. Can you tell me how important it is for those students to be trained in technology?
Yeah, I teach, I'm in the design department, and I teach a range of courses, anywhere from web design and production to interactive design, to digital video, motion graphics, and it's important for my students to know how to actually make those final products to communicate to an audience that they have an understanding that technology can actually make working prototypes and things like that, you know. But it also is it's a good challenge for my job to have to do technology and design. So I'm not in a computer science program where you just focus on purely the programming languages, scripting languages. I always have to teach my students the balance between actually making something functional like that, to work with a developer and work with people who know how to do the programming and get a basic idea, but they also have to really focus on design and concepts and visual communication. And that's been one of the bigger challenges of my job, is to do that. But I know they greatly appreciate it, and they're really good at finding the results, you know, finding the answers to make their prototypes work. So
you're always looking for that happy medium, the communication, science, and the coding. I'm sure they have to learn the coding, like C++ and Java. That's great. Now, can you tell me, do you think that students can learn everything there is to know about technology via the classroom?
Actually, it's really funny that you mentioned that, because I try to do my best job of getting them the basics. Like, I can give them a foundational level, you know, of everything that they kind of need to know. But my biggest thing is to teach them how to learn, because they need to know how to, like, find the resources, go to Google, and let Google be your teacher to an extent, because I'm not going to have all the answers for every little specific, you know, project or incident, and technology is constantly changing, which we know. So it's like, I mean, what I teach them now could be obsolete in 5 years from now. So they need to know how to solve problems and find the results and find resources and things like that on their own. So yeah.
So do you think, like, YouTube, for instance, is that beneficial to your students?
YouTube,
everything's on YouTube.
Yes, constantly, because mine have to find, like, for a motion graphics class or a digital video, they have to find research of examples of other things that they can be inspired about. So YouTube is a direct result of that, and Vimeo, and they can link to that in their blogs and show me, like, what they're finding in the world around them. So yes.
That's incredible. So you use blogs when you're teaching.
Yeah, so not only am I teaching them technology to make things, they also to document, process, and communicate their ideas. Instead of, like, writing a paper and turning that in, like, it's all on a blog. So everything is written on a blog, photos are posted up on a blog of things that they like, videos, things and, like, such like that. Yeah.
That's amazing. Now, can you tell me, do you think that there's any benefit in having other disciplines, including technology, in the curriculum?
Oh, yeah, obviously, right? I mean, everything is integrated into technology now, like just the way we live our daily lives. And that's why, as designers, we're helping people communicate a little better and hopefully, you know, influence a better human relationships through using technology, and not in a negative sense, but in a positive way. And I think students across campus, you know, sociology, psychology, obviously computer science, I think any single discipline in the school can benefit from one side of technology or another. It may not be coding a website, but it's like using social media to communicate, and using, like, a phone or an iPad for this example, you know, doing this whole thing that you guys are doing today. You're a poli-sci student, the guy behind the camera, your communications, we got somebody from Wacom. I mean, these are great students from all over campus using this technology right now. So, yes.
It's changing our world, obviously. Now I have to ask you, just tough question. Do you think that Westerns could use more training or classes with educating our students with technology?
Oh, interesting. Well, it's hard because I live in my own little bubble, and I'm doing that every single day for my students. But I think Western has some really good resources. Like, I always send mine over to APUS to use, like, their cameras that they have and anything that they can provide for us equipment-wise and knowledge-based-wise. The help desk has been a great resource. The library is really advancing in how you can search for your stuff, and you can do stuff on a kiosk now, which I know is a new development from last year. I was on the technology committee a year ago, and so just any new technologies that Western is getting is helpful. Student workshops where they teach you like Flash or Dreamweaver, or resources that students have. Yeah.
Well, wonderful. Well, I just want to thank you so much for talking to us and taking the time out, and keep inspiring our students.
Great. No, sounds good. Thanks.
Back to you, Dan.
What kind of technology do you use in your everyday life?
I use my laptop and my phone every day.
Why is that?
To do homework and to keep in contact with people.
Is technology cool?
Yes, very.
Why is that?
Because it allows you to access things or get in touch with people when you normally wouldn't be able to.
I use my phone and my computer mostly.
Do you have a smartphone?
I do.
The internet most of the time.
Okay. How do you use media in your everyday life?
Everyday life? Boy, I use media, we start out with like just Facebook, Twitter. I use that almost more than my cell phone, talking to people on that. I make videos on YouTube. I talk to people all over the world. Just like that I met online, whether it's, I use it all the time, meeting people and doing cool things over the internet.
I use the internet a lot.
Yeah.
Probably mainly just the internet, find everything nowadays.
Well, I have an iPhone, so I use that about every waking minute of my life. It's basically attached to my hand. I use a laptop, which was probably at one point a reformatted toaster, so I try not to use that too much. But other than that, I use study tools, like the computers on campus, or calculators, or that sort of thing, I guess.
I use video cameras like what you're doing now, sending out everything that I want to say. And actually I did a video recording today in order to reach people who have not talked with them.
Perfect. Do you have a smartphone?
Yes.
Welcome back to Tech Tonic Live. As you can see from those comments by students, whether it's email, texting, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, there's a variety of ways in which communication and new media is changing how we communicate with each other. Here with me is communication professor Jennifer Karchmer, who in addition to teaching professional communication, also is a practicing journalist. So we wanted to talk a little bit about how new media, technology, social media, how it's changing the news media. So Jennifer, how has all these new technologies, how is it changing how reporters work and how they report?
Yeah, it's an interesting time for journalism now, because when I graduated college in 1991, folks were saying, make sure you can type. Today, though, you really need to know how to use the social media as a reporting tool. Now, I will say that it has its pros and cons, and I, in fact, don't even use Twitter at this time. I know what it is, and I realize that it is a good tool, but more and more journalists are using it as ways to disseminate information. It's that simple in terms of portals. I'll say, too, that I've actually used Facebook as a way to contact a few sources for stories, which is interesting. You really need to discern when it's appropriate to do that, but two of the people who I was contacting both use Facebook in a professional way. So in that way it was appropriate, but it can be a dicey situation.
Yeah, that's really interesting. How is these new media channels, how is it potentially, I wouldn't say necessarily causing harm, but how does it potentially compromise people who are maybe news subjects of the news themselves?
Yeah, as a journalist, it's a real interesting way to look at journalism, because on the one hand, they're great portals and they're great ways to network and get in touch with people, but really to me the social media is about speed, and sometimes accuracy is not always the best. So in journalism, accuracy to me trumps everything, but there is a sense of competitiveness in terms of getting news out there, Twitter, Facebook even, and other portals. just using the technology, though, it's a beautiful thing to see how we're in touch with people from around the world. I'm actually just back from a trip from Iceland where I was reporting for 6 weeks about freedom of the press. So I had an opportunity to actually upload information to a website and use some of the technology.
Right. Well, I read an article this morning that was talking about the increased readership of newspapers on tablets and smartphones and how they are thinking that it might be the redemption of the news industry, and that for a long time we thought, well, with the internet coming, that printed newspapers were going to go away and printed magazines, but now we're seeing editions on iPads and on iPhones and that sort of thing. Does that perhaps give a new lease on life to journalists who have been struggling to kind of figure out how do we straddle this new digital world?
Wow, that's really good to hear, because as we know, the newspaper is going by way of the dinosaur, the printed version, which to me hurts a little bit, only because I'm a big fan of the printed page. But it's good to know that people are reading and picking up the newspaper, whether it's in print or it's on a tablet, an e-reader, a Kindle, and that they're actually reading it. But from my standpoint, I always like to focus in on the ethics and the foundation of just good, solid journalism, which is not always necessarily in line with the business model. I mean, just because newspapers are dying doesn't mean that journalism should be dying.
Excellent point, right? Newspaper is a business model, but there's a lot of ways to engage in journalism, right? Excellent. Thank you for joining us. It's been wonderful to talk to you. So up next, we're going to talk about why technology is important. We've got some students that we're going to hear about their thoughts on why technology is important. Obviously, we all have our opinions on that. Here at Western, we're exploring that in many different ways. So let's take a listen to that.
I think it's very critical. I mean, nowadays, obviously, technology is on the rise, and probably almost everything in our lives will revolve around technology and media. So.
Technology and media literacy aren't of particular importance within my career, as I'm going into a psych major, which is more people-based. But I would argue that media literacy could be important to all people in all career fields, especially within event programming. If you want to get your name out there or want to get your event or your cause that you're passionate about there, you really have to kind of be knowledgeable about media literacy in order to actually make an impact.
In my future career, I think media is important. I want to be a politician in the future, and a politician always need a media in order to send out their message to people wherever they are.
It's a very important part of businesses and how they run, so I think it's very important.
People use it all the time, and if you don't know how to use it, then you're left out of the loop.
Welcome back. We have reached the end of our road together, and on behalf of the students, the staff, and the faculty that we've been working with today to produce this first ever live streaming event at Tech Tonic Live, I want to say a sincere thank you and congratulations to the entire team who did a fantastic job. We've learned on the fly here, and that's what you should be doing at universities. So thanks everybody for participating, and check out the Western Ustream account for Dr. Matthew Dunn, who will be talking about the future of media in his keynote speech for Tech Tonic Live. Thanks very much for joining us. We'll see you next time.